Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is my wonderfully focused Period 1 AP Bio class. Say hi. Hi. All right, so this first section of Chapter 18, all of 18 is the origin and history of life. We're going to do just the first part in this recording, the origin of life. So we are going to start from nothingness, which, thank goodness, somebody had a camera when the earth was first formed and took this picture. The beginnings of the earth up to a living cell, a self-replicating cell. So we're going to work our way through that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about Luca. My name is Luca. Okay, so do you know that song? You should Google it now. Okay. Luca is the last universal common ancestor. Yes. It's actually kind of a sad song if you listen to it. Don't listen to it now. We're working. Luca is the last universal common ancestor. I would like the oldest bio buddy to explain why is Luca in this spot and look at what surrounds it. You should already be comfortable. Go ahead, oldest bio buddy.
You know why? Because they're eukaryotes. Prokaryotes are made. Oh wait, that's what it's about.
All right. So what do these three things represent? The three what? Domains. The three domains of life. Could you differentiate between these three domains? Which one is prokaryotic? Is that the only one? Bacteria and what? Archaea are both prokaryotic. Okay? Eukaryote is the eukaryotic one, right? We know the difference between those cells. Why do we have then two prokaryotic groups? Why don't we just have prokaryotes and eukaryotes? What's the difference between bacteria and archaea? Yes.
The environment that archaea can withstand as much.
Okay, exactly. So archaea can live in more extreme environments. Bacteria you would find pretty much anywhere. But archaea have more can live in extreme environments, which must mean they must have differences in their cell what? Membrane and cell walls that would allow them to withstand that. And differences in their enzymes and what temperatures they can withstand. If you're a thermoacidophile, right? We've talked about that. And remember, archaea was misnamed. People thought that was like a really ancient bacteria because it lived in real extreme environments. But it turns out archaea is more closely related to eukaryotes than it is to bacteria. And I mean, they're both prokaryotic, but it came after bacteria. So last universal common ancestor. So you're assuming that everything kind of evolved from that. Early Earth consisted of, oh, I have another slide. Here's another slide. Youngest bio buddy, this slide can be you. Go ahead. Do a little review. All right, so we're going to trace the early Earth out up through living organisms, but you need to keep in mind that the early Earth consisted of inorganic molecules, but living organisms consist of biomolecules that are what? Organic. What are the four important organic molecules? Carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. They're all organic, but they had to come out of inorganic molecules. Nobody was there. So these are all, we're going to look at some hypotheses of how that could have come about, and we're going to assume that there were vast amounts of time to allow that to happen. So we will discuss 4 different stages, and we're going to be looking at chemical evolution first, and then transitioning into biological evolution. So stages 1 through 3 will be chemical evolution, and we're going from monomers to polymers to protocells. And then biological evolution is abiogenesis. Let's break that down. Abiogenesis. Genesis means what? Yeah, creation or beginning there. And then abio means without what? Life. So how did life come about without any other life to generate it? Because we know the cell theory, and that's all cells come from what? Yeah, except for the first cells, right? Cells had to come from somewhere. Okay, so abiogenesis, the origin of life from non-living matter. Now, the first big step, we said monomers to polymers. Tell me some monomers. Then what's the monomer for carbohydrate? Sugars, right? What's the monomer for protein? Okay, sugars and amino acids are organic. What did I tell you early Earth was? Inorganic. So step one is even having the monomers, right? We have to have the sugars in order to build the carbohydrates and the lipids, right? We have to have the carbohydrates and lipids and proteins in order to build even the outline of a cell. Okay, so we have to first build the organic molecules. We have to build the monomers before we can build the polymers, before we can build the cell. Okay, that's where we're going on this in chemical evolution. Biological evolution is now we actually have a single-celled organism that's prokaryotic. Then how would we get a eukaryotic cell from that? How would we get a multicellular organism from that? Okay, could I have the dark-shirted bio buddy explain the difference between chemical and biological evolution? Go ahead. I yell, in your own words. I yell. Okay, come back to me. It is estimated that our universe is about how old? 14. All growing up, it was 20. Okay, and recently it's been changed to 14 billion years old. And then our Earth, what do we need to do? We have to click the meteor. Okay, so our Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. Now, by all estimates, there was about 1 billion years of time before the first cell came about. So we have 1 billion years to build our cell. And in order to build our cell, again, we have to make organic monomers, and then those monomers have to get hooked into polymers, and those polymers then we use to build a cell, and it has to be a self-replicating cell. Okay, so all of that is going to take place in 1 billion years, because the oldest fossil is around 3.6, 3.7 billion years old. So we have 1 billion years in order to establish that. Yes?
So it says earlier it had like inorganic molecules. Carbon like existed, like it was there, but it wasn't forming molecules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was simple. Simple. Remember how we talked about like CO2? Carbon dioxide is not considered organic because it's so simple. Okay, so it's how would you have molecules that incorporated carbon in a more complex way? Okay. All right. So early Earth, thank goodness there was somebody with a camera there. You have molten magma, layering, density settling out. You don't have to know all of this anymore. But obviously the more dense molecules went to the Earth's core, right, and settled out. Our first atmosphere, probably technically we didn't even keep our first atmosphere because there wasn't enough density of the Earth and the gravitational pull to even hang on to it. Probably then a second atmosphere formed as a result of that. Probably most of the atmospheric gases came out of what? Volcanoes. Came out of volcanoes, exactly. So you had layers and you have plates that are shifting and moving around. You have volcanoes going out. Do we have any ozone layer? No, no ozone layer. Okay, so you've got UV radiation coming in. You've got molten magma going on. You've got a lot of water vapor in the air, and so outgassing from volcanoes, probably that early Earth. You have comets coming in. And the early atmosphere was reducing. Okay, so now we need to review oxidized and reduced, right? So if it's a reducing environment, okay, what don't you have if it's a reducing environment? You don't have, free oxygen. You could have oxygen, let's say, in water, but you don't have any O2. Now, why is this good? Because it is conducive to building. not to breaking down, right? You need oxygen to burn things. If you went along in your car and you took a knife or something, somebody's car you didn't like, and you went along the side of the car, scraped off the paint, you expose the metal, what is it going to do? Rust. It's going to break down. Okay? All things break down over time with the exception of Twinkies. Okay? But all things break down over time because they get oxidized. This, I'm kidding. It's
Honey?
it's a reducing environment, and so it's conducive to building because oxidizing things kind of break them down into smaller molecules, right? And so here we're building. So the kinds of gases that we would see, now we can click on the moon to see those gases. These are the types of gases that you would have in that early Earth. These are the gases and molecules we can use to build our organic molecules. And in fact, well, let me come back to that in just a minute and I'll get you here. There was water as vapor. I actually took this at Mammoth at Rainbow Falls because I thought it looked very vaporish, early Earth. Anyway, so this is where that is. But because, also Mammoth, the Earth's distance from the sun allows water to exist in all three states, but it was probably a very thick, moist atmosphere full of water and full of these gases. And what we're trying to do is with these molecules, we are going to try to go up the steps and build life. Do you see the steps I have right there? Find the steps. Okay. So this first section, we're trying to get from inorganic molecules all the way up to what? Cells. So in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to take these inorganic molecules like water and carbon dioxide and nitrogen and hydrogen, etc., and we want to hook these together to build what? Organic molecules like sugars and amino acids and fatty acids and nucleotides. And then we'll hook these together, these monomers, into what? Polymers. Okay, like proteins and carbs and lipids and nucleic acids. And then we will use these to build our first cell, which was probably prokaryotic. And yes, you could take a picture. I worked really hard on that slide.
Well, I got the note clicked left.
So I'm going to ask you, do you know what this is right here? Not a protein, but a amino acid. What is this? That's an R group. How many different R groups do we have? 20. You're so smart. So we talked about bricks building what? Walls, right?
Oh, really?
So we need, though, if we want to build our wall, we need to have some bricks first. We got to make the bricks, okay? We have to build the bricks out of these inorganic molecules. So how did these brick building come about? You had to just make these bricks. The monomer evolution. This is a form of chemical evolution, increasing complexity. So on your notes, let's see where we are. Okay, we're nowhere yet. We're all kinds of places. The idea is where could these organic molecules have come from? Some hypothesize that comets brought them. We didn't actually synthesize them, but comets brought these organic molecules here to Earth. Some of them could have come out of hydrothermal vents underneath the water, especially a good source of nitrogen. But the reigning hypothesis here is by a man named Operin. And what he did, and do you see this on your notes? Oprah and Haldane, is that what I have? Okay, so here's the deal. You ready for me? Okay, be right here. Okay, so early Earth was in layers. Make layers. Okay, you had volcanoes, okay, putting inorganic molecules out into the Earth. And then you have some energy coming in. You have, that's lightning. Okay, go again. Okay, there's lightning. You have UV radiation. You have molten magma. And with this energy from this early Earth, you would be able to build organic molecules. Okay? So from the beginning, early Earth, we have layering. We have volcanic eruptions, all of these gases. We have energy. We have radiation, and we have molten magma. And then from this, we could build organic molecules. Okay? Then we want to hook these organic molecules together, right, to build a what? Polymer. And then hook these polymers together to build a cell. Okay? So, so it is possible that with these early Earth conditions and the energy provided by UV radiation and molten magma, that you could build in this like organic primordial soup, you could build a bunch of organic molecules in that way. So then, if you look next, you'll see, go down to Opern-Haldane hypothesis, primordial soup hypothesis. Monomers built abiotically. What does that mean? Without life, from inorganic molecules present with the energy present. In the environment. It was reducing, which means there was no free what? Oxygen. You should highlight reducing no free oxygen. Why is that good? Because it's conducive to what? Building. So then, some other scientists, Miller and Urey, they actually did this super cool experiment. They said, well, let's even see if we can make that happen. So what they did is they tried to recreate early Earth environment in the lab. And so they made it a reducing environment. They put the gases that you would think would be present due to outgassing from a volcano. They have an electrode, which was supposed to be like what? Lightning. And here we've got some heat like molten magma. And they let it circulate for a few weeks, just kind of spinning around. And guess what they formed in there? Amino acids, fatty acids, glycerol, and nucleotides. So they were able to synthesize abiotically, right? The building blocks, the bricks for polymers. And I don't remember what I sent right. Oh, here they are. Miller and Urey. Yeah. In case you wanted to see them, because I know that's important. All right, so go down to Miller-Urey experiment. Early Earth gases, were put in cycling apparatus. Electric sparks provided energy. And within a week, all 22 amino acids, they had 22 amino acids they formed, in addition to other molecules. 20. Well, there actually are more. We just not that we commonly see. All right. Now, nitrogen's going to be a problem, running out of nitrogen. So ideas of how, like you would get more ammonia as a result of that. So you could, at these hydrothermal vents, you have catalysts. Catalysts would act like a what? Enzyme. But think about it, enzymes. Do we have enzymes yet? No, because we don't have protein synthesis yet. Right? So how do you build something that we don't even have nucleic acid yet even to start this process? So we need things to act as catalysts, which they currently do. Metals can act as catalysts to convert then nitrogen outgassing from a hydrothermal vent into ammonia. And then you can use that because we need nitrogen. Think of all the places we need nitrogen. All of our amino acids, right, need a source of nitrogen in order to build it. So this is where it could have come from. Okay? So this is also relating to another, okay, go to B. Further studies hypothesized nitrogen originating as N2 in deep ocean thermal vents and becoming converted to ammonia. Okay, so this then leads to another whole hypothesis that everything came from here. Okay, and so the iron sulfur world hypothesis, thermal vents could have provided all the necessary ingredients to form monomers. And then there's the extraterrestrial origins hypothesis that a meteorite could have brought supplied the Earth with organic molecules. Okay, so we have 3 hypotheses. Not it.
Not it.
Pass or play on explaining the 3 hypotheses as a source of organic molecules. Go. Quickly.
What is the reason? I know. Yeah, I know. It's really big. I know. I agree with you. I heard it it's like that. Like the rock came together. But the sun didn't exist. What?
All right, moving on. So now we have a source of monomers. Now we're ready to build some what? Polymers. All right. So now we want to take those bricks and form them into the different walls of the four important molecules, right? Tell me again what they are. Carbohydrates. Lipids, proteins, and what? Nucleic acids. So then who came first? The code or the enzyme? Think about it. What's our code book? DNA. Okay? So you have DNA in order to build proteins, but in order to build proteins from DNA, you need proteins, you need enzymes. So where did the enzymes come from if they came first? Do you see what I'm saying? So who came first? Proteins, did they come about at the same time? Which nucleic acid came first? So there are a couple of different ideas. There's the protein first idea. Sorry, that closed parentheses got moved down. There's the protein first hypothesis. There's that the RNA came first or they came at the same time. But of the two, proteins and nucleic acids, you're going to need right away, okay? Because that is our code book for life. Now, lipids are important though, right? Because why do we need lipids? What important role do lipids play in a cell? Yeah, the phospholipid bilayer. Now, the significance of having a phospholipid bilayer is whatever is happening inside is different than what's happening outside. It's not just the same going in and out, whatever. So you could have some exclusive metabolic reactions occurring within that cell. So a lipid is going to be important. Now, the reason why I have here same time clay, okay, is because remember how we saw that you need a catalyst to make a reaction occur. So it is possible that you could have synthesized them on clay with clay acting as a catalyst, because clay has the ability to hold energy, like even heat energy, and then re-radiate it back out. Clay, the minerals in clay can help facilitate reactions to occur. So maybe that's how it came about. So we're gonna go somewhere, I don't know. Again, going back to, this could have all happened at hydrothermal vents. There's that philosophy. So let's go on to your step 2, evolution of polymers. This is without the assistance of enzymes that are polymers, okay? Without the assistance of enzymes. So we can go back to that iron sulfur world that I already mentioned. Go ahead, blue, tell them what it says. Okay. Your second idea here is that with the heat of the sun and this becoming thick, this soup becoming thick with a bunch of amino acids and all the other building blocks, that they just keep accruing, that the heat of the sun could facilitate the process, like if it was splashed out onto the rocks and the heat and water was evaporating out, that you could hook amino acids together from that energy, right? And you could build proteins in that way. And even today, if you take proteins, hot proteins, and cool them quickly, you can cool them into spheres, which could be the beginning of a cell what? Membrane, because proteins are in, right, a cell membrane. So this next one, the man who put it forth is Fox. So I did a little Fox for you to remember that. And there he is. Does he not look like 1970s Rico Suave? Like he should, I'm sure he's really nice. Anyway, so he said proteins first, and that you would form these polypeptides, maybe along the shoreline using energy from the sun. And then when they get splashed into the water, you do form these microspheres as a result of these. So go to protein first, hypothesis Fox, heat from the sun could form protenoids, and then I gave you everything else. Okay, then there is the other philosophy that RNA came first. And because RNA can carry the genetic code, which it does, right? What do we call it? What is this? What did I just form? Yeah, what is this? Every 3 bases on it? Codon, thank you, but this is called mRNA, right? mRNA? Hello. Okay, so mRNA can act to carry the code. Maybe it was the code, right? We talked about this. Because the code is mRNA, and maybe because it's single-stranded and vulnerable, remember we talked about small interfering RNA? Maybe DNA evolved as a way to store the code. We know there's a leading and lagging strand anyway, right? We really only pay attention to what are the strands when you make mRNA. Maybe that is the code. And we just store it zipped up as DNA and put it away wrapped around histone proteins if we're eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells don't do that. But if we're eukaryotic, maybe that was just a way to put the code away. We are like, oh my gosh, DNA is the code book. No, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just how we store it. Maybe RNA came first, and then we know about ribozymes, right? We talked about SNRPs, we talked about ribosomes catalyzing the facilitation, right, of hooking amino acids together to build the protein. Remember, it has the 3 spots on the ribosome, the P spot, right, the A spot, the E spot, exit. You with me? That's the ribosome facilitating the process of hooking amino acids together. What is a ribosome built out of? Our RNA and proteins, right? So maybe it's the code. So maybe RNA came first because it can act as a storage, and it can act as an enzyme, like a ribozyme. So these two people, I think it's Czech, but it might be Czech, but I think it's Czech pronounced. And then Altman, they shared the Nobel Prize in 1989. Were you born yet? No. No. All right. Yes.
Who's correct? These two different theories.
Sweetheart, we don't know.
This
This is okay. Now let's take a moment, just a moment to appreciate that. In science, we're not always. We just put our best hypotheses, and we do claim, evidence, reason, right? So we make a claim. It could be RNA first. Why? Here's the evidence. It can act as an enzyme, and it can store the information. The reason. Do you see what I'm saying? We're putting our best hypotheses out there. We don't know for sure.
So we're just like saying stuff. Saying it because
Somebody take care of him so that I don't. Okay. It would be better if one of you did it. All right. So. All right. Oh my gosh, welcome to science. So RNA first hypothesis. RNA could be a substrate and an enzyme. A substrate and an enzyme. All right, so now think where we are. We had inorganic molecules, and we have hypotheses on how we could have gotten organic molecules, and now we have hypotheses on how we could have built polymers. Now we're ready to build a what? A cell. Now, it's not a true cell yet unless it's self-replicating. Unless you can store information and self-replicate. So we need to start off like by having a barrier and have some sort of genetic code in there eventually. So an early cell is called a protocell. Okay? So a protocell has some sort of lipid protein membrane and carries on metabolic reactions within it. So there are a couple ideas here. Fox, we already learned about Fox. Remember? 1970s, okay, star. And he's that whole protein first hypothesis. And I told you proteins, when you take hot proteins and you cool them, it can form those little spheres. So that's his idea. And Operin, we already learned about Operin. What did Operin talk about? Yeah, so we have early gases, could have formed organic molecules with, right? That could have all formed, and so he had also hypothesized how that first cell could have come about, and he calls them coacervate droplets, which are like lipid molecules. So either way, one says the protein came first in the cell membrane, the other one says that the lipid came first in the cell membrane, or maybe they happened at the same time. Because if you have a lipid layer, it will incorporate proteins. Okay, it will incorporate protein. So let's look at each of those. Okay, take a look at this picture. And Slate, I want you to compare the protocell membrane with a cell membrane as we know it today. Go ahead, Slate. All right, come back to me. So the plasma membrane, a boundary is required. A boundary is required for regulation and maintenance of cellular activities. If lipids are available to microspheres, they form a lipid-protein membrane. And then I gave you like a couple of different examples here. I'm going to show them to you. Okay, and Fox is back. See Fox? These are proteinoid microspheres, and maybe that's where the first cell evolved from. In fact, some scientists seeing these actually named them and thought they had found a new form of bacteria. But it turned out it was just hot proteins that cooled, and you could just recreate it. It wasn't actually a living cell. Okay, so they look like they're starting to act like a cell would act a barrier and moving things across that barrier. So those are microspheres. These are what maybe coacervate droplets would look like, liposomes, like some sort of lipid-based. And that happens when you put lipids into water. And maybe it was a combination of those two that they could have joined. Now, the first cells, do you think they were autotrophs or heterotrophs? What's easier? What do you think is easier? Heterotrophs. Heterotrophs, all they have to do is do what? Eat. They just have to eat stuff. They just have to do cellular respiration. Autotrophs have to do photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Do you see that? That's more metabolic pathways that a plant does than we do. We just have to break down and oxidize the sugars in order to generate ATP. Plants have to have the ability, right, to make the sugars and then break it down to generate ATP. So probably the first organisms were heterotrophs. They got their nutrition by consuming things. So let's say you are consuming A. So those first cells, all they did was consume A, consume A, consume A. Pretty soon the level of A is going to go what? Down. So those who are able to take B and change it into A and then consume it, they would be at an advantage. But then what's going to start to run out? B. So those are able to take C and convert it into B and convert it into A. Do you see a metabolic pathway? Okay. So eventually this worked its way all the way back until you're taking energy from the sun in order to generate whatever letter we're on now that can be changed. Okay. So the first, that's number whatever it is under there, nutrition. Probably anaerobic. And what do you think they did? Think about this before I answer it. Make it logical for you. Think about cellular respiration. What are the two ways to do cellular respiration? Aerobically and what? Anaerobic. So what do you think the first organisms were? Anaerobic. Why? Yeah, there was no free oxygen. Why? Because what hadn't evolved yet? Photosynthesis. And of photosynthesis, which one probably came first, cyclic or non-cyclic? Cyclic is the simple one. Remember the simple, easy one? And you don't reduce any ADP. Do you remember that? Non-cyclic, you have a source of electrons, and that is you have the ability to split what? Water. And until autotrophs had the ability to split water, you didn't have any what? Oxygen in order to do aerobic respiration. So think of this logically in your pathway. You probably had anaerobic fermenters, and eventually then you had cyclic photophosphorylation, then non-cyclic photophosphorylation, and then aerobic respiration. Discuss with BioBuddy, why does that make sense to go in that pathway? Go, have that discussion. Do you need me to say the list again? Okay, so you probably had anaerobic fermenters, then cyclic photophosphorylation, followed by the light-independent reaction, right? Then non-cyclic, and then aerobic respiration. Why that pathway? Why would it have to be that way? Go, talk about it.
And the cyclic, all you do is just make
All right. So anaerobic respiration, which would just be glycolysis followed by fermentation, right? Doesn't require any free oxygen. How much ATP does it get you? 2. Remember? You only get it from here. So it would get you 2 ATP. Do you think you could be a multicellular organism only getting 2 ATP from a glucose molecule? No. So we're talking unicellular. Then your first maybe some sort of chlorophytus, some sort of green algae, maybe your first autotroph, doing cyclic photophosphorylation, just real simply generating out that ATP and then using that to build sugars and to reduce your CO2. And then non-cyclic, the ability to split water. Now you have oxygen available, so now you could do aerobic respiration and generate a larger volume of ATP. This would lend yourself now to be not unicellular, but what? Multicellular. But somewhere in there, you better go from being a prokaryote to a eukaryote as well. Yes?
Does non-cyclic phosphorylation produce less ATP than, or no, produce more ATP than cyclic?
No. So it's not as efficient. You can kind of think of it, it's like probably the first one that was established, and later, about 2.3 billion years ago, was the oxygen revolution, probably done by cyanobacteria. They're the first ones who were able to do non-cyclic photophosphorylation. But up until that point, they lived with less, they weren't making as much as what modern plants can do today. All right. So I wanted you to put on there anaerobic fermenters, only participating in glycolysis and fermentation. All right. Now we want to go to where we are a true cell, a self-replication system. So there's some slides up here, okay? 2 of them you've already seen. And you need some sort of genetic code that you're using to pass information along. You're not starting with genes from scratch, but you're actually passing DNA along that can be selected for, right? Natural selection, whichever ones are the most adaptive, right? You could have a little bit of chance in there as well. So was it RNA first? Was it protein first? Was it at the same time? We're going back to that again for our self-replication system. It could have been RNA, it could have been protein, or Cairns Smith, 2 different scientists, said that maybe this happened on clay. So I want you to remind yourself about the central dogma as we know it today. Blue, go ahead, take them through the central dogma. So and that you had RNA and proteins form at the same time. And because clay can act as a catalyst, it has iron, it has zinc in it, and it can collect energy and re-radiate it out. So that is saying that your system that you have to pass on information to the next cell, if you're a self-replicating now organism, a true cell, that maybe that RNA and the proteins came about at the same time. And evolution of that genetic code. Why don't we just have Slate take the top one and Blue take the bottom one, and then it's not me reading it. Go ahead.
So it's your for prolong
All right, so if we go back to our same hypotheses and follow them through, the RNA first would say that RNA coded for proteins, and then hypothesize that reverse transcriptase. Ooh, what's reverse transcriptase? Enzymes take RNA and synthesize DNA. Good. Form DNA as a storage location. So you form DNA as a storage location. Okay, number 2. Protein first would say RNA is complicated. It's more likely that proteins evolved first to guide the synthesis of nucleic acids. Now this is upsetting to Max. Why would this be upsetting to Max? Because we don't know the what? We don't know the answer, right? We don't know the answer. These are because nobody was around then to document this. So these are just hypothesized. Okay? Number 3, protein and RNA simultaneously. First cell would have true genes that could have been replicated because of the presence of proteins. And then number 4, the genetic code probably underwent natural selection to efficiently store the genetic information. And then we have our, yes. Oh, yes, I'm not quite done with it, but I will. Thank you for reminding me that. Okay, so the first fossil, all what we worked our way through, as far as origin of the earth, and when we have this whole process from forming our organic molecules to building our monomers, to building our polymers, to building our first early cell, to building our self-replicating cell with the genetic code, we have 1 billion years to do that. And the first fossil is about 3.6 billion years old, probably prokaryotic. And probably heterotrophs evolved first, then autotrophs, and then later eukaryotes. If you look at the end of your notes right now, okay, go to the end of your notes and go into the summary. Do you see what I did for you there? Okay, I gave you dates. I gave you key events. I gave you times. Are you with me on that? Do you guys pay attention to the summaries I give you? Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Who loves you? Who loves you? You. Miss Litton loves you. Okay, just so we're clear. Okay, come back. This right here is kind of taking you through each of these. Starting at the top, ping pong back and forth. Take a step and work your way from top to bottom. Go blue. Okay. Now, when we first started, we said there was what kind of evolution first? chemical, and then biological. Okay? Got it?
Got it.
Decide, are you going to do the chemical evolution or the biological? They're two different colors. Here you go. Guys, see how the stages are on the side? This is in your book too, right? Kind of takes you through the different stages. Go, discuss. Yes. Yes, I can. Okay, now riddle me this. We have spent in less than an hour's time to discuss over 1 billion years. Okay? So, have we discussed every little nook and cranny of it? No. What we need to walk away with, okay, what you must know, if you look what you must know, is you have to be able to hypothesize how the early Earth could have come about, you know, and support that. Okay, so I've given you several, okay? You want to be familiar with all, but you want to go with one that you think is most likely, right? And just be able to support that opinion from what we have discussed. Here is this, right here. Some of you wanted to grab that.
Or just send a picture you grab it.
What? Oh, you want me to Instagram it?
Yeah.
All right. Here you go now. Oh my gosh, it shut off. Oh my gosh, what do I do?
Let's go blink 182 for the week. Are you afraid?
Oh, you guys, you got 10 likes already.
Oh my god.
Because there is replicating an environment.
Let's go, Usher.
So why are you
Oh my goodness! Good job!
What? It's the same direction.
Good job. Tenacious D and Coldplay. Backstreet Boys just a bit outside. Francis? Usher. Okay, so it says, which of the following is a reason why life does not arise today? How come life doesn't? Because today, this is why you don't have some pond back behind your house and life is doing this, okay, originating. Why is that? Because it's an oxidizing environment. So things tend to do what? Break down. Okay, that's the kind of environment that we have now. Okay, we don't have a reducing environment, you guys. You'd be dead. Oxygen, you know, breathing. It's important. There's too much pollution, really? Everywhere? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Litton, for mocking us appropriately. Just letting you know, on Amazon Prime today, there are deals on fashion and beauty.
Did you know the Amazon store in New York?
Yes. It watches you. It watches you. You walk around and pull things off the shelf and leave, and it knows exactly what you've got. Total Big Brother.
Wait, so it articles like way to eliminate jobs.
Yeah. That's okay. Maybe somebody would have outsourced him anyway. Okay, so most of you got that. Miller's the one who performed the experiment. What did some people put? Let's see. No. You know you have your notes in front of you, right? Okay.
Look, I did. I'm just.
Jeremy, no.
Okay, Tenacious D. I was watching Straight Outta Compton last night. I'm so ready for that. All right, yeah. Protocells probably obtained energy as photosynthetic autotrophs. No. Do you remember us saying why? That would be a more complicated reaction to be able to do photosynthesis and cellular respiration. It would be easier just to do cellular respiration. And of the types of cellular respiration, aerobic or anaerobic is simpler. Plus, there was no free oxygen. Okay. Good job, Madonna. Let's go.
Wait, are we not having highly specific videos?
Just one Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, this is varsity. We have gone over this, okay? Life has only existed for 1.5 billion years. No, what was the number we went with? 3, okay? And then 3 billions. The Earth, you think, if you can remember, like 4, 3, 2, 1, okay? So the Earth is 4, right? Then life, 3. And you want to think like oxygen revolution, eukaryotic cells, you know, you're going through 2 and then 1. So there's a key event that occurs in all of those. And I put a summary at the end of your notes just to kind of help you with that. But you should have known that. Good job, Usher. All right. Now we're going to transition, and I'll end this, and we'll pick it up in the next one. Make good choices. If it's late at night, have a piece of or pie.